Hi, everyone. I'm Camelia. I'm the designer for the governance secure for both policy and compliance. And today I will talk about my experience like design for different, it should be groups, not stages. So first is like I was designing for policy that was a while ago, and we have a need to like change the policy scope. So before you can only like apply the policy to individual project or all project under a group. And then like we have this compliance kind of a requirement that will group different projects together. So if I quickly use a analogy for compliance framework, it's more like if you think about like hospital has different departments, like they have eye department, I don't know, kidney department, bone department, and there are like different projects. One project called eye, one project called kidney, and then like people go to different projects, but they might be labeled differently or grouped differently by another method, like based on, like, for example, their blood type. So blood type A can have both problem of eye and kidney, and because they are blood type A, they will treat differently. So there are like, you have a project, but you have different way to group project. And the framework label is defining like a different type of grouping of the project. And for security context is based on the risks. So in the real scenario, like for banking, they might have like high risks for everything, every project related with credit card, but those credit card thing can be in different projects. So this way they label all those projects high risk, and they can link certain policies to make sure that their regulation and rules are combined. So on the policy side, it seems very straightforward. We already have like compliant framework labels created. And user can just says like, I want this policy to apply to all projects under this compliant framework. And in the policy settings, it's just an easy thing. Says like projects with a compliant. Oh, there is a copy issue. I can copy paste from like design to here as well. But it's like apply this policy to all projects with compliance framework, and this is list of compliance framework. You can select it. And for the user flow, like the most straightforward flow is like, oh, I need to change the scope of the policy because I have a regulation. I need to enforce those policy for those projects, and I know those projects are under certain framework. So I just go to the policy editor and I use existing framework and then update the policy scope. When it's got into problem, it's like when user go there and says like realize that, oh, I cannot use existing framework because I need to create a new one for certain reason. And then like for compliant framework, it need to be updated on, let's say that compliant framework is a different team. It's not a policy team. There are a lot of work they have. And in order to cooperate with the policy, there need a lot of things to be updated. And it's too much work to policy team to take over like all the editing on the compliance framework side. So I'm talking about now the problem of the compliance framework side for adopt like this feature related with policy. So compliance framework, when I was designing, they are really in a very minimum like viable stage that we only have like a area where you can create compliance framework label. And like this is the editing thing. So it's in the general setting area that you go see a list and you edit it. So what we can do for the user is like having a modal window to let them create a new one in the policy side and create it. So the problem is this is like you just create an empty framework. You didn't tell me which project belongs to it. And if you want to do that, you cannot directly, like in the settings area, do that because compliant framework just introduced. And you need to go to completely different area and to link the policy, to link the project, or go to individual project to apply this label to individual project. So for compliance framework at that stage to update this, that needs a lot of work. It's several milestones and design work. So like the policy team also cannot take all those efforts. So we decide, okay, this is best we can do. We will like park it for the compliance team to improve it. So that was the decision one at that time. And then like there's another workflow that lead to the like same problem. So user might don't go to the policy side when they think about changing the scope and with the compliance framework. They want to go to like compliance framework and then link the policy there. And then it's even adapt the like the problem even more, because it's not only about linking project in this area, but the compliance framework need to add another feature like linking policy here. So this part, like we decide to, on the policy side, what we can do is make it read only. So when you change on the policy side, we can show a list here, make it read only, but make it editable is again too much engineer effort for the policy team to take over. So I think the problem with like crossing stage, because like there are limited resources and like different priority and stuff. So it leaves us to like not satisfy user with a complete continuous workflow. So we lead user with something that really like not very smooth and useful. User potentially in this case jump back into 3 different areas and those 3 different navigations. And if they're not familiar with the area, like let's say that they don't use it every day, they need to every time go to the doc to check it. And for this case, there is no better overview that where you see my project with the compliance framework related with the policy, there's no overview. And also user might run into permission problems because compliance framework is have a different permission and the policy had another permission. So there are a lot of like things we left with the user, they need to solve it by themselves. I think like for the easiest one to solve is actually the design, and then the engineer effort is like you need to balance it. And the most difficult time at that time was the priority, because really that was the higher priority for policy, but a little bit lower priority for compliance. And then like what happened afterwards is luckily I moved to the compliance team. And then like the first thing we identified at that time as a higher priority is move the like compliance editor outside from settings general. And I took the chance to make it, to expand it to a UX sim. I'm not only moving it outside from like a settings area to the like a secure compliance. I'm also like just changing it before you see just compliance framework like a label description and like actions. I make a policy linking list and the possibility there. So, oh, where did I go? This one. Yeah, so now like for the navigation, compliance and the policy are next to each other. It's easier for user to navigate. And also user have a better overview with compliance framework, what is linking to it. And also on the policy side with the scope area that we'll also see like it's applied to certain compliance framework. And also in the editing area before is like just read only direct user to policy side. And now they can directly like linking the link and just directly from compliance framework. And then what happened after this? So I didn't completely like follow up the implement because I switched back to policy team. And then I just update the old design because this one was like about to be in development. So I was really lucky. I was right in time and to update the design for this one. And I directly incorporate what might happen in the compliance team. and put it on the modal window when user change the collapse scope. When they create a new compliance framework, they can both create the compliance framework itself and also linking the project. And also the permission problem. So if user don't have permission to update the policy on the compliance framework part, we will show a pending status. So the benefit of let's say this lucky thing that I jump between the teams is we really can create a continuous experience. And because I'm jumping team, I start to learn the workflow that from both sides, both from if you start with the mindset of editing compliance framework, and if you start the mindset of my editing policy, so you might interact in different area, but for the same job. And also I think because I'm in between and those two teams are similar area, so it's easier to prioritize different things and there are other collective things happens between those two teams, and also smoother follow-ups. So I think the learnings I take is even in the future, I'm on the one team, so I should always spend more time to identify a complete workflow of this a persona or even different persona. Just don't leave it out. If you don't have time to design it, but at least just have a lo-fi version, or at least to have those ideas park up in in an issue. What I found out is the difficulty at that time, we talk with compliance and we have the ideas, but because we don't have things properly tracked because of cross stage, so the issue might be left out. So I was thinking we have UX depth to track all the depth we left in the one stage area. If we have something called cross stage depth label or something, we can easier track cross stage leftover designs features. And it's always good to bring the counterpart if you don't have enough time. It's just the timing. Sometimes it's very difficult. Other people have a lot of work to do as well. I think the most difficult part I found is really the prioritization, because the prioritization, it really requires the engineer and design and the PM to dedicate certain time on one topic together. And I don't really have a good solution for that, but there probably need some structural changes, or if we have this cross-stage depth label, we can say that every quarter we need to clean up higher severity cross-stage depth label as OKR for the department or something. Maybe that's easier for us to relocate time. I think that's it. Thank you. If you have any questions, I will switch to the question area. This is the correct document.
I guess I have a question that I want to pose to you and everyone else. So you happen to recognize this cross stage stuff because these two stages are within the same section.
Yeah.
Any thoughts on how we can do this when it's not so easy? How we can recognize these situations?
Yeah, so what I think is always have the complete workflow there. So where at the beginning, me identify it is really oh, user might not start with the policy. So they might start with the compliance framework. And when I start to draw the compliance framework, I realize a lot of issues if we go that flow, but then that flow is left to another team. And I think that's the biggest challenge. I think at the designer, the best thing we can do is collaborate with the other designer, at least have the completely workflow layout. That's the lowest effort. You don't need to have design, you don't need to have stuff, but you have the different user interaction stages. And then you can have question mark where potentially have the problem that you cannot solve now. and because of limitation of engineer effort, and because of limitation of priority and stuff. But really, like, we need to highlight that. And if we can identify that in the research, this is a bigger problem for the complete workflow to user finish the job, maybe that's need to be like reconsider the prioritization for another team as well. So maybe that's a way that we can like change the prioritization cross stage. But then I think that's another thing is like we probably need to expand the research. So usually, like when I do research, the policy and the compliance, there are still different personas. When I recruit, like I need to recruit like 10 people, not only 5, if I want to identify the complete workflow. Now that's another expansion. I think is probably like a groundwork, more necessary that can be identified earlier.
Austin, I see you're typing. If you want, you can just ask and I'll type.
So just as like an open-ended question, I think there are maybe 2 things that are super beneficial to helping get better cross-stage collaboration. One is spending time as a designer to better understand breadth across the product. So when I was on the compliance team, it took a while to better understand what Secure was doing and how there were intermixed user workflows, especially as like MVCs from compliance grew and started to like kind of intermingle. But really, like the biggest success I remember seeing was when PMs were excited to integrate their different features together and find ways to create cohesion. So I think that's the other part, is getting our counterparts excited about integrating into other parts of the product and not just creating their own thing, which is a different type of challenge to try and go after.
Did you do that yourself, or did it just happen synergistically where the PMs got excited?
This synergistically, honestly, at the time it was like Sam Kerr and Sam White were kind of both the PMs over those 2 areas. And they were both kind of seeing some blending in their customer feedback around compliance and security workflows around like policy management, as well as like trying to enforce like pipelines and stuff on the compliance side. So I just somewhat kind of benefited from their natural relationship that they had developed. But I think in general, like getting PMs excited to work with one another opens that door for finding ways to collaborate further, because they were pushing solutions that were moving closer towards integrating features together rather than creating things that were disparate and somewhat loosely linked together. But it's hard because it's like you start with an MVC, maybe it doesn't work so well with the other things out there, and you have to work towards it, which it looks like that's what we've done. And I'm super excited to see how compliance has evolved.
Yeah, I think another thing to get PM excited is like, usually PM are excited when they hear customer feedbacks. And I'm not sure like cross stage, like research or like customer feedback from the sales, like might help. Like if that can be identified, let's say we create issue address, like different PM from different stage says, hey, those like are the customers regarding those 2 things. We think they're connected, and that might bring some attentions.
So you had a point?
Yeah, one general point also for how we can, in all of GitLab, all of our team members make workflow and make cross-stage collaboration easier is really understanding the entire product. And the more we just go in, try out, test things out, enable something that you've never tried out before, the more you will get to see where maybe workflows break, but you will also see where our consistency is maybe not as good as it should be. It's funny because when I joined GitLab, my first task was to do an accessibility audit, and that kind of forced me to enable every single page that I could find. And even today, I still find pages that I've never seen before. And so I think this kind of diving in, breaking the product basically intentionally because you try out all these different kinds of things, that's really how you learn so much about also how your own part is connected to the other parts. And if anybody has problems with finding good example project or finding good example data, please let me know. I'm more than willing to help. My own side project Git has basically all features enabled that I could enable so far, and you're always happy to fork that one. But I'm also more than happy to create even smaller minimal data ones with you.
Valerie?
Yeah, I was just curious, because this is a challenge that I think we all face. How much did you find technical constraints or limitations prohibiting the experience? And then when that happened, or if it did happen, what did you do to help overcome those?
So I think like for compliance, like governance secure in general, the technical constraints are quite high. So we usually end up like for the whole milestone, like talking about like what's possible, what's not possible after a design is done. So like what I can try to do is like to make sure that the MVC is still a good experience and the follow-up is really a follow-up. I think the most difficult part is like the follow-up is the follow-up because sometimes the priority changed after the MVC. Like I need to chase it back at some point, like to see that it's implemented or not. But sometimes I also got lost that like this is not like implemented as the original design and stuff. So I still also need to be improved on that to make sure that like the iteration 1 and iteration 2 are like follow up as we planned.
Yeah, that's always a bit of a challenge. Do you feel like you're headed into, did you come up with a ideal experience? Did you come up with mock-ups that you're like, I want us to be here in 6 months? Let's just say 6 months. And then you broke down into MVCs with the team to help achieve that. So do you feel confident that your current MVCs are going to get you to that, let's say, 6 month vision?
You mean I designed the MVC the 6 months thing, or like I have a MVC and the follow up within 6 months?
Sorry. Did you put together a vision of what the experience may look like in about 6 months from now?
Yeah, and usually it's not 6 months. So when we do design, we design for the vision, and then the like the engineer identifies probably like 1 year work. So then we need to like break it down into like MVC and like 3 months and 6 months. So usually at least there are like iteration 1 and iteration 2 follow-ups there.
Okay.
But usually the like the iteration 2, let's say, usually got left over. So we mostly manage to like to iteration 1.
Okay. Do you feel confident that the team's gonna get to that vision that you put together?
The final vision,
The final vision, yeah.
yes, so far it doesn't really happen.
Okay. Do you have, what are you gonna do about that?
So
Right?
like
So
like
I think this is a big topic for everyone. So sorry, I'm putting you on the spot a little bit, but what I'm interested in learn is how are we thinking about this? If we know that it's a challenge to get to that vision, what are we going to do to help get there?
So what I recently practiced is just keep bringing back like the old topic and like always like a little bit challenge more to the engineer, can we expand it a little bit more. So there are 2 ways: refer back to the old issues and related to it. So sometimes like the engineer and PM realize, oh, if we solved that problem before, we don't have this problem now. So maybe we need to go back to the previous one. So just make like people understand or realize that like maybe before we shouldn't have left over. I feel like this is kind of mentality change, like over the long time. Like we start need to like just train ourselves to understand that like sometimes do a little bit more beneficial for the future if we keep bringing back to the old designs. And like another one is like even the threads is very long. Like don't just left over. Like sometimes you can push it over even the issue is closed. So I'm trying it now. It's just like sometimes feel like we talk about MVC for over one milestone is already 2 milestones. Maybe I should get it done first and move to another issue. But sometimes it just benefit to keep talking.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, because I think we're all trying to figure out how we're going to accomplish that. And I think you're right. It's going to take us being pretty insistent and making sure that we continue to refer back to that vision, because we want to make sure that whatever MVCs or whatever iterations that are going into the product are ultimately leading to that vision. And I've seen sometimes where, sometimes that doesn't happen. Sometimes things start to deviate from that vision, and then it makes it so much harder for us to ultimately get there. I appreciate you sharing that insight, Camilla.
Thank you. Oh, another thing, like when I was thinking, I think I'm beneficial from switching teams. I'm not sure that will be something like if designers start switching teams and then they know that, oh, I did that before and I can bring it to the new team. So that's also could be a potential thing. But I'm not sure how feasible that is.
Yeah, good point though.
Becca?
Yeah, I just wanted to add, I think it can help to get on the same page as your PM when it comes to those follow-up iterations and get it on the roadmap. So assign a milestone, don't just throw it in the backlog. But even if something comes up and it has to move 1 or 2 milestones, I always have a conversation with my PM about, okay, well, this is when we're doing milestone planning, we had this planned for 16/8 already. Because I want to make sure that we follow up on what we couldn't get to in the MVC. And I've found that just putting things like in a backlog is a lot more challenging to get prioritized. They tend to get forgotten about. So I'll just put it 2-3 milestones out, which just, serves as a reminder. But for me, getting the PM buy-in is really crucial in getting those follow-up iterations prioritized.
Yeah, that's a good
I
point.
have a question that's kind of larger, and we could move it because I know we're kind of going out of time, and it's more of a general question about visions, because I'm wondering if they could ever be too large. If we're finding that we're not able to actually get to them, like how do we define how large vision should be?
I think there's a fine line between figuring that, MVC versus vision, and it has to be a guidepost that is doable. Like I think we've gone down the MVC first path enough to recognize that how to interpret that when you're starting with a vision instead, when you're starting the other way. But it's not black and white. Valerie's answer is yes. There can be too big, and we just have to continuously assess it. I think it's worthy of a deeper dive conversation, but I also want to make sure that Sasha has enough time to do his thing. So yeah, maybe we can bring this up in the next UX Weekly. I think that's a great topic.
I think that's
Okay.
a really good point. I do think that we could think a little bit bigger and more futuristic. But then like, what's the point if you're just spinning your wheels on something that like would involve other stages, changing back end stuff? I mean, it's a really interesting topic. I like that you brought that up, Gina. Let's definitely put a bookmark on that.
Yeah, there are pitfalls either way, but worthy of a deeper dive for sure. All right. Thank you, Camelia. I'm going to end this, and then Sasha, you can take over.